Then they had a problem. How do they get rid of me? And it became more and more obvious that they didn't really have grounds, but the president was saying I had to go. And so they came up with all sorts of things. And they had 5 days to present more evidence, and that's when they came up with these photos. But what they said was, and I'll just read it. They said, and background is, I had a missionary visa, and I really had it until 2024, but you have to renew it every 2 years. So this was where, so I'm on a missionary visa. So they say that I wasn't doing missionary work. Now, you know, like helping with organic farming, visiting political prisoners, advocating for the rights of political prisoners, advocating the rights to land, standing with the workers for their rights, not to mention the drug killings that I think it's nearly 30,000 now, and I visited some of the houses. I mean, it's just terrible. They're like little alleyways, and these are the people that they're picking off. I went into one house. It was shocking because, well, they're all shocking actually. But what struck me was there was a house where there was the grandparents, and then the son and his wife and 4 little children, and they sleep on the floor, huh? And they said to me, and when the police came into the house, they pushed the father and the grandfather onto the ground. They shot them in the head in front of all these people. But the family said to me, thank goodness the bullet went that way and not that way, because if it had gone that way, it would have hit the children. I thought, goodness, this is what this is what you're giving thanks for. It's just, and another place I went, the little 13-year-old, again, her father was shot in front of her, and not a drug user. There is a quota, so they have to kill a certain number of people per month. And she hasn't been out of the house, she won't speak, she's just... So, and that's where Bishop David has been he's in a particular diocese where a lot of this killing's going on, and he goes out at night time, goes to the houses, he's set up scholarships, he's set up psychosocial counselling, etc. And the president has accused him of being a drug pusher, accused him of all sorts of things, and said, kill him. And this is his thing. If the workers strike, kill them. If the urban poor go into housing that's not occupied, kill them. If the farmers go onto land to plant crops, kill them. And that's his answer. If the bishops want to speak out, kill them. And that's basically the climate, so that it's giving permission for this tyranny all the time. And even when Marawi and the because I don't know whether you've heard his terrible thing, he's on women, but he said to the soldiers, I'll rape as much as you like, I've got your back. I mean, this is the sort of climate that, how do you have respect for women if that's what he's saying to the military? So they were some of the things that I was seeing. And so when he says that I wasn't doing missionary work, I'll tell you the definition they got from Google. A missionary is a person who has been sent to a foreign country to teach their religion to the people there, whose mission is to go somewhere to help others. In many cases, the goal of the missionary is to teach about religion so that people can convert to their faith. I'm thinking, Mr. Google hasn't read Vatican II and Nostra Aetate yet. And so that was what they were using, because they were grasping for straws of what they could, trying to look for something legal that they could throw me out. So they're saying being with the poor, being involved, standing with them is not missionary work. Whereas I was arguing, and we've got a great theological discussion, I mean, to me, the basic thing, when you ask Jesus what's the basis, and you ask any Jewish person, and love God and love neighbour. But that can't be in abstract. You have to be with the people, and then you get to love them, because you know them, you know their joys and their sorrows, their anxieties. Like the Vatican II called us to know the anxieties, the joys, the sorrows of the people of God, and they become our anxieties, joys, sorrows. And so I think that's what love, when Jesus says love your neighbour, it's not an abstract concept. It's something that you really must do. And I was thinking, I had some quotes from, when they say that you shouldn't be political, and that was the next thing they came up with. I couldn't be political. So legally, we're arguing, because the case is still ongoing, the right to freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of religion, freedom of movement for anybody in a country, whether they're a citizen or not, as long as you're not breaking the laws, as long as you're not advocating overthrow of the government, you have those freedoms. So we're saying, nothing that I did was breaching those freedoms. And we're also saying, from a religious perspective, you can't divide people up. There's a difference between partisan politics, like an advocate and lobbying or working for that a certain person be elected or whatever. But life is political. And I think the Pope very much, Pope Francis, and he's following in a tradition of social teaching, so it's not, he's developing what's thing, but he says, the Church's social doctrine is not a privilege for her, nor a digression, a convenience or interference. It is her right to proclaim the gospel in the context of society, to make the liberating word of the gospel resound in the complex world of production, labour, business, finance, trade, politics, law, culture, social communications, where men and women live. This right of the Church is at the same time a duty, because we cannot forsake this responsibility without denying herself and her fidelity to Christ. So spreading social doctrine, living the social doctrine, is seen as evangelization and not conversion. And solidarity with the poor and the promotion of peace are constituent elements of what it means to be a missionary church. And so what they're saying is political. It is political, but it's also part of our responsibility in terms of working for the common good, working for the dignity of people, and anything which tramples their dignity. As children of God, as created by God, we cannot stand by, because to stand by is to condone what's going on. So, and then the Pope goes on to say, Christian conversion demands reviewing, especially those areas and aspects of life related to the social order and the pursuit of the common good. And he talks about it needs structural change. He says, welfare projects which meet certain urgent needs should be considered merely temporary responses, as long as the problem of the poor are not radically resolved by rejecting the absolute autonomy of markets and financial speculation, and by tackling the structural causes of inequality. No solution will be found for the world's problems, or for that matter, any problem. Inequality is the root of all social ills. And so he says, we have a responsibility to transform society, and we must not be silent in the face of massive human rights abuses.